Hello, welcome. We're waiting for attendees to come in. This is Snehal Patel from ZEISS, and we're at Filmscape, Chicago. And it's so wonderful to be with everybody. We're just gonna wait a few minutes until people check in. And as you're coming in, Pete and Dana are here already. And Stephen, my colleague in Los Angeles, is here as well. So Stephen Balsley is with ZEISS as well. He's gonna be checking out the Q&A. So for all of you attendees coming in, if you have a question during the session, we can do rapid fire questions, not a problem. What we'll try to do is actually call you, turn on your audio so that you can actually ask your question live to Dana and Pete about the show. And, that way it'll be a lot more fun and interactive that way. So I hope everyone's doing well. I'm sure a lot of you are from Chicago, Chi-Town. I'm from Chicago myself. I was born and raised there, and I went to Columbia College. That was my second degree. Actually, my first degree was at University of Illinois, so I'm an Illinois guy, and moved out in 2006, now in Los Angeles, and I miss all of you. And you know that I love visiting when I come and check out the sets and everything you're doing, so it's really exciting for all of us to be here. So let me introduce you to Dana and Pete. So first, Dana, we'll go by alphabet.
Yeah.
I want you to, both of you guys, I want you to tell me just a little bit about yourselves, and then what we'll do is we'll check out the Fargo trailer and content online while we answer some questions. So Dana, where'd you start in the industry, and how'd you get started, and how'd you get here?
Yeah, I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised, and I got a job. I'd always been around because I grew up in LA. There's always like big studio films, but I didn't know anybody in the business. So I never really thought about that I could get in the business, but I got a job basically driving a truck on a low budget movie, and it went forever. And I became a camera assistant on that and got the bug and just said, this is what I'm going to do, and went for it. And here I am.
You really came up through the ranks. Very cool.
My first day was driving a truck full of all the equipment, and I brought a book. I thought I was going to read a book that day, and I never opened the book. I saw it was crazy. I got out of the truck, I remember, and people were just running around. They were taking stuff out of the truck, and I'm just like, it had this kind of circus environment. And for the first time in my life, and I was 20 years old, and for the first time in my life, I felt at home. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that, but I just I think I'd always been searching for, what my life was going to be or whatever. And I wasn't worried about that I would find it, but I literally found it. And I can, it's like a movie image. I got out of the truck, came around the back. It was all happening in front of me. And, like actors and equipment and everything, and I'm just like, I love every bit of this, and then literally, and then the free lunch, and I was just like, I was in.
Very cool. And Pete, what's your story?
My I guess entry to cinematography is interesting because I was in college and I was playing a lot of tennis at the time, and I sprained my ankle really bad, and I went home and I was kind of bummed out, and I sat on the couch and I put on PBS, and Wild Strawberries came on, the Bergman movie. And I was so compelled by the cinematography that at that moment, and how it was telling the story, that at that moment I was like, I definitely know what I want to do in life. And so I just started taking all the photography, cinematography classes that I could. And I got an internship at a record label. And I met a director named Simeon Sofer. He was actually more of a documentary filmmaker. He was actually nominated for an Academy Award for a thing called Wildest Show in the South. It was about the Angola prison rodeo. Anyway, he was doing a lot of music videos, documentaries, and he just saw that I was working really hard. And he just kind of grabbed me and said, okay, you're with me. And I went on the road with him, and he had this Aton, and it was great because he was a director cameraman, and he always had this theory of like, you always take care of the lens first. And he was really great mentor. And from there, I kind of segged into shooting music videos and documentaries for him. And that was the beginning of my career. And it's actually something I still try to do to this day. If I see somebody on the crew that's really, really working hard, and like I could tell that just really has a great passion. I always just kind of grab them and say, do you want to be in camera department? If you're interested in cinematography, then I see how hard you're working, and you're with us for now on. And,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Pay it forward. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool, guys. Both of you are working on a show, and I think you're wrapping up this next week, right? Or it's still going on for a little bit longer?
One more week. Yeah, one more week. And then there's some just pickup stuff, but this is our kind of last real production week.
Okay, so this is wrapping up the 4th season of Fargo. This year that it features Chris Rock. So I'm going to go ahead and play a trailer in the background while we're talking and chatting. But the topic of the conversation is how this look was created. And I think the best thing to do is kind of go back, because look always starts with the source material, right? So Fargo is already a long-running show. There's 3 seasons, right? So there's already a certain type of look that's involved. It's based on a movie, which was quite popular by the Coen brothers. So there's that look as well. But then you get the script, and then you got to decide. So both of you, and you could jump in and fill in the blanks, but Dana and Pete, like, what were the conversations that you had with the producers and the team and the showrunners, directors, when you were putting the show together about the look of the show?
Yeah, well, I've done all 4 seasons, and season 1 was really the kind of homage to Fargo, the movie, respecting kind of the look, and we shot, most of the season was shot with the same lenses that Roger Deakins used, and that was kind of like, we were already messing with the Holy Grail, and we didn't want to, go too far. So kind of like the lens language and the look was really used more. Season 2 being more of a period, 1979, it changed. Again, the lens grammar was very similar, but the look was different, and the lensing was different, and the color was different. And then season 3 was, every one of the seasons has a homage to multiple Coen brothers films. So season 3 had a, Inside Llewyn Davis, look to it really. And, but that evolved. Season 3 evolved a little bit with, the way the story was told with the camera, and then season 4 being our biggest departure, I think. And where, they're really the main kind of creative force that we talk to is Noah Hawley, who's the writer, creator of the show, and all 4 seasons. And he's a visualist for sure, and he writes that way, and he's really involved in it. And but we felt that we had earned the right to do whatever we wanted this season. Far as I think we paid our respects to Fargo the movie long ago, and now we wanted to change the lens grammar, or be able to change the lens grammar. We didn't, it's not crazy departure from the first 3 seasons, but we wanted to be able to, use longer lenses. And I thought the period, this 1950s, the longer lenses would be better suited. And this is something that Pete could talk about, is the thing is, now we have all these fans kind of come in, and people have seen the show, and now I have to get all the new crew, new DPs, new directors, hey, we're gonna try something different. So I know you're in love with maybe what we've done, but and it's been a bit of a push, to try to for me, I've just forced the longer lenses. It's large format, so maybe it's hard to tell, but the compression and things like that are for me, we're using a lot of 50 millimeters, which is a wider field of view with compression. So that's something we would have never done in the other seasons. So Pete probably has a really good view on that, because like I said, he watched all the other seasons, and now we're I'm saying to him, hey, we're gonna try something else.
Yeah, what'd you think of that, Pete? That conversation? Were you like, yeah, no, I wanted to do the same look?
Yeah, I know. It was interesting coming into this. I mean, I gotta say, the great thing for Dana, kind of backtrack too a little. He showed me this this book by this photographer Saul Leiter, Early Color, which I still carry with me, Dana. I still, you know, and I actually show it to all the directors I've been working with. But yeah, when he explained the format and how we could use, you know, how you know, the 35 and the 50 were just these really beautiful lenses that, as he said, with wider field of view, but with less depth of field, then it was just really exciting to come in and know that we could create something so cinematic, right? I mean, everybody is always chasing after this anamorphic look, I think, because they like how you could shoot wider but have more of a fall off a focus. And I was just immediately, you know, when I watched the episodes that Dana shot, I was struck immediately just by how big and how cinematic things felt, and how you could really isolate things on particular on the 35 and 50, and just how beautiful the depth was. So it was really great. I mean, I first came into the show for 2 episodes, actually turned into 3 episodes, I should say, that Dana's directed. And he was also really great in the sense of saying, you know, like, you understand the show and the language and hear the tools, but then I also encourage you to, you know, to bring your voice and your fingerprint to it. And so it's just been an amazing time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's talk about the format, because on the original Fargo, the movie, the format was Super 35 BLs, right? So there were BL cameras, BL2s, and T21 ZEISS lenses, right?
No, they weren't. They were. So this is good for you. We're ending maybe the show on ZEISS lenses, but it was Cooks. They were Cook S4s, and that's
on Fargo, the original movie.
Yeah.
Because I have a picture of a BTS scene from Fargo, and it's showing the T21s.
It was Cooks.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that was some special shot or.
It was an outdoor shot that I have a picture of, so it could be that they
I'd be interested to see, but you know, I think they were S4s, and I don't know if it was a BL2, probably a BL4 S or something.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It might have been a BL4, right? At that time, sure.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what we started with, but you know, it went, you know, season 1 was S4s and Leica Summoluxes, because I was a year later transition when
both great lenses, yeah.
Yeah, and then season 2 was rehoused Cook Paint Pros, original. Cook Paint
right,
Pros,
sure.
rehoused. Season 3 was ZEISS Summoluxes.
Leica Summolux, right?
What's that?
Leica Summolux?
Yeah, like what did I say? ZEISS. I'm sorry. Leica Summolux, and which I resisted for many. You know, I'm a huge Leica freak. You know, like in still cameras, but for some reason I couldn't wrap my head around the Cine versions of the lenses until season 3. And when I should take that back. I did season 1. I brought them in, and they were perfect for where I brought them in. But for a whole project, season 3 was that project, and it kind of fell in place to me. And then, you know, Legion is with Noah Hawley, the same writer creator, and I used season 1. I used ZEISS Master Primes of that, but then I guess season 2 that the ZEISS Supremes. I guess ZEISS Supremes on season. No, because large format. I only did 3. So season 3 was the first time with Supremes, and I fell in love with them, and then now cut to season 4 of Fargo, that the Radiances became slightly available in the beginning, and think that you and I were drinking at a bar in the ASC, and you know, you gave away the secrets, and then you had to give them to me.
yeah, it was great, because Keslow was testing our ZEISS Supreme Prime Radiance at the time, and they're like a modified version of the Supremes, which you had already used. And I knew you were going back to Fargo season 4, and I knew that it was going to be a different time period. So I had this much information, I believe from Colette, actually, from when we chatted, or someone at Keslow. And then when you and I saw each other, I knew you were going to probably use the Supremes on the show. And I said, well, you might want to test the Radiance. because it'll give you a warmer look and a different type of skin tone, and of course the the flare characteristics. And I think you tested like 2 days later in Chicago, and fell in love with them, and that's who were chosen, which is great. We love that whole thing. And now you have 4 sets on the show, right? Right now, currently, because each of you has your own camera team. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have 4 sets. Yeah, that's the problem. And you guys, like anytime someone's going to suggest something to us, there's possibility that there's going to be someone will want them, but they won't be able to get them because we're going to, we need
an issue.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if Pete had shot the Supremes before. I don't know. I don't remember if we talked about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at Keslow in LA, and when Robert Keslow got his first set, and I ran into him, and he's like, Pete, I got these really cool lenses. I got these Supreme Primes, and we put some up, and we looked at them, and he goes, and they're great, and they're very sharp, and these like really beautiful resolution, and and he goes, and we're working with our lens techs. Dana will probably know a lot about this. To give them some extra characteristics. We're starting to detune them and put some stuff in their elements. And he's like, so we're getting some feedback from the DPs that, some people, love that, crisp, clean image like Deacons, but then some people, they like flaring characteristics and just, some aberrations. And then when Dana told me about the Radiance Primes, he's like, bro, they came out with those lenses. ZEISS released them. These ones have like.
No, they weren't released. They weren't released.
No. When I talked to you, when you were doing the show,
yeah.
He said, we have the Radiance lenses are basically, what they're trying to do with some of that, what the lens techs are trying to do with some of the things. They have the characteristics, and then the second I saw him on set, I was just blown away. I mean, when I saw Dana's footage, and I was like, wow, I mean, just have this really beautiful character to them, and I sort of like, I think I'd mentioned to you guys, like I've spent so much of my career shooting ZEISS super speeds, and when I saw, the one thing when I saw, the original Supreme Primes, I was like, oh, they're beautiful lenses, but they are sharp. I'm, maybe just looking for a little bit extra character. And then when I saw the Radiance lenses and what Dana was doing, I was like, oh, there it is, and that's going to be an amazing migration, even just personally for me.
Yeah. That's really cool. I'm glad that you got turned on to them and liked them and found something to do with them. I believe, looking at your trailers and the footage from your show, that you really use them in an interesting way because they reflect back a little bit of that blue light, to cause the flare characteristics. Overall, they're a little bit warmer, much like the Cook.
I didn't. That's not my takeaway, but I get you said that, and someone else said that. I forgot. Was talking to at ZEISS, and I don't know. I'm not that technical when it comes to that. For some reason, I don't think about that much, Yeah. But I see that when I look at the lens, I see the blue coating.
Right.
Right. Like if I look into the lens, and and somehow that's. But I guess I've never did it like a test where I just said this is a warmer lens, because I don't remember. I mean, I did test them, but I don't know if I made that distinction particularly. And for me, that wasn't really the selling point.
What was the selling point for you, actually, Dan?
No, the selling point was, to me, a lens is about character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's it could be a cheap Russian lens, it could be whatever. It's about character, and it's like. The interesting thing about like the C series Panavision lenses, anamorphics, like now they're probably a little bit better, but for a long time in the film days, you would get a different set and the different lenses would have different characters, and like there'd be a 40 mil that had a different character than the other 3 40 mils.
Mm-hmm.
And and now with modern lenses being so like technically perfect, that doesn't happen as much. It's like. The lenses, like master primes are master primes in a lot of ways. It just, they just, what you're going to get. So, to me that they had a character, and then we're doing 1950s Kodachrome look. Mm-hmm. And, so I needed to complete the kind of the equation, because like if anybody's ever heard me speak a little bit, there's always a bit of math to what I do. And so that was like the final. So like when we were actually at the ASC and you talked about them, and I had never heard about them before, and you know, and that was kind of where I was at right now. I was testing lenses. I was testing a lot of things. I mean, you know, one of the things that I did was I told, you know, I'm very fortunate that I'm very good friends with everybody at Konczal. I've known them forever. I've known Robert since we were, you know, camera assistants together. And, you know, I said, I want a list of every filter you have. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I want a list of every single filter you have, especially the Claremont ones that came in, because I just knew they had a huge amount that just came in. And I don't even know if they were cataloged yet. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to find that, you know, if I had to create the character with a more modern lens, then I was going to do that. And you know, my assistant Chris Winterborn is, you know, he was really gracious in helping with that, because I'm just like, no, I want to test all these filters, and you know, yeah, and a lot of it's just I could look at it. I could put it up and look and say no, yes, no, yes. And you know, there is a cocktail that's on these Radiances that work for the Radiances. The ones that the cocktail that would have been for let's say a Master Prime or a Supreme would have been different. It would have needed less or more or whatever.
Exactly.
So when you mentioned the characteristics of these lenses, and then again my spidey senses went off and said, okay, that's ding, that's one. And now I add another 2 elements to it, and that's 3, and then that's something to me. So that's kind of how my brain thinks, you know, because it needs these elements, right?
Additive, yeah. It's not just one thing; it's a mix of things.
It's a mix of things, but the right mix of things. You know what I mean? It's always about the. So I'm not going to tell you what the cocktail is, you know, and we'll let Pete talk a little bit about it, because he, you know, he got to experience it as well. But it, I could have never began. You know, when we were talking, I could have never told you what that was going to be, because I didn't know what it was going to be. It was just like, that's why I'm like, give me every filter you. I mean, I had a list, and then I looked and I said, give me these. I didn't say, give me every filter. I just looked through the entire list and then picked out all these obscure filters and then created it. But so then Pete, I'm like, again, if I even told you the cocktail, it was 47%. Well, how many people here? They probably wouldn't do it, because they'd probably say I'm lying to you, or you're out of control. But Pete got to experience the cocktail.
Yeah, that's something that Dana and I share too. We both like to play with filtration and experiment and try to find, you know, a specific look for a project. But again, just in terms of the lens, I mean, any lens, the first thing, you know, we're dealing with cameras that are sharper than anything we've ever seen. And the first thing I really look for skin tone. I look to see what skin detail is like. And I think the first thing that I really want to be special in a lens is what the actors look like. And, you know, we're always dealing with movie stars. They're very concerned about how they look. And something that isn't talked about so much when you're going to school is you're going to have a responsibility in a relationship with the actors. So as you know, as I've migrated, you know, from film into digital, I've always looked in lenses, you know, something that's going to be appealing and just in terms of the skin and how cinematic things are, and that special quality to me, first and foremost, that I'm looking for in a lens is that, you know, something that's sharp, but also, you know, has that nice texture for the skin. And with these lenses in particular, that's the first thing that I saw. And again, like going back to like the feel of it, like you'll always talk about DPs, you know, before large format shooting super speeds, or even going back to like Todd Ao's and, you know, the Panavision C series. I mean, that's what we're looking for. Beyond that, for every project, yeah, there's always like these conversations about, you know, like how Deacon shoots, and Deacon's like, you know, I don't use filtration. I want the cleanest possible image. But I would say personally, and maybe perhaps Dana feels similar to this, like I like filtration. I like to come up with a cocktail. And so when I saw what Dana was doing, I just immediately connected to it. And I was like, God, it's just adding something special. This has really been thought about. And the cocktail that's being used on this is, is for me is making us really feel like we're in this period, you know, and it's soaking into the sensor, the stuff that we're using, and in ways that it's affecting contrast and it's affecting color in ways that, you know, so colors will just be rendered differently. And I remember years ago, like hearing like, you know, the Sopranos was that Phil Abrahams was using a tobacco filter on it. And like, you know, I just knew that there was something different about the show. It's like, it just looks, there's something going on here that's beyond just the normal color grade. And that's something that Dana and I think, you know, really do connect on and both like. I always want to kick the look of something out of its normal range and then find something specific for every project. And when it does start soaking into the colors and affecting the contrast, and the great thing about that too is I think as a DP, you can really put your mark on something and you sort of set a limit even in color correction, right? It's like we're going to go into color correction and you know, the biggest fear as a DP is like somebody's going to maybe take something away from you later, right? So
right.
I've talked to a lot of other people.
Turn it into the image.
Yeah, you want, it's like these filters are here, so you're at least going to have to deal with this. You're going to have to, like, I have a fingerprint here, and yeah, it's something I like, you know, I admire so much about Dana on the other seasons. I was like, man, I mean, every season is just has a specific look, and it's not just a random thing, right? It's underscoring the tone, and I feel like that's what Dana really does.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, I was watching an episode from Legion, actually, once again, season 3, not season 4 yet, but yeah, I was like, wow, that's a kick-ass look for a TV show. Like, wow, it's just the next level. And you know what's really interesting, and Dana, you could probably talk about this, is like, you know, with Fargo, the movie, it's filmed, right? Now these TV shows are being shot on digital, right, for made for television audience, but more efficient. Nowadays, mainly we're using digital. So you have this digital sensor, and this time you guys use the Venice, right? The Sony Venice, which you use, no? Oh, no, sorry, that's Alexa LF, right?
Yeah.
Alexa LF Mini. So you're talking about the format, which is just slightly larger than full frame. VistaVision, did you use OpenGate in your show? Yeah, you did. So you used
yeah, I mean, that's our native, you know, and then when we go speed, obviously some things change, but yes, that's native is OpenGate for us.
So now let's talk about the interaction between the analog and the digital, because what we're talking about so far, it's the analog, right? You know, you're using filtration and lenses and creating that look and getting that projection before it even gets to the sensor to look the way you want. Now, you know, you have it in the can. How involved are you with the color correction process that Pete mentioned? Like, are you there do you do test day and then test grade and then have Luts ready? Do you have DIT on set? Are you doing any tweaking on set? Like, how does that work to kind of maintain the look that you've created?
Yeah, I mean, I always have DITs. Okay, I'm one person that, well, I'll probably be the last person that has a DIT ever, because that's the day I retire, when they say, when I don't have enough power to get that, then I'm done. So I drop the mic and I leave. And you know, Ryan McGregor, who's our DIT this season, who's done all 3 seasons or 4 seasons, you know, he's you know, the secret weapon on the set that I have for the look. Now, season 1, 2, and 3, that's just like a K1S1 LUT, and except, okay, I should take that back. Season 3 is a LUT. So season 1 and 2 are K1S1 LUTs that we just do all the color on the set, and kind of, again, the lenses, the filtration, the creating the period with the colors and the wardrobe and all that, and building that in as much as possible. That's that. Season 3 was I had to actually create that. I created that LUT myself in my apartment, because it was so radical. Like, I even dealing with Ryan, I'm just, Ryan, I want to strip the blue spectrum out of the image, and there was like, but no one really believes you want to do that. They're like, okay, well, they'll bring the curve down a little bit of, you know, and I'm like, no, man, I want to
take it out
away. I don't want it to exist. I mean, again, we're photographing it and it exists, but the LUT, you know, takes it away. So that was, you know, and then I had to finish in Airy Raw because of that, because of the way we had to do the color. So that was incorporating my colorist, Tony D'Amore, who's done all 4 seasons as well. This season, and again, most of the other projects I work on, I don't use Luts, like show Luts. I K1S1 Luts, and I do it all in camera. Again, filtration, color of lights, and all these things. This season, because the Kodachrome, which I've been trying to create a Kodachrome look for a few different things, but I never went to this distance. And this distance was I got my colorist involved early, and I reverse engineered the whole thing to create it. Again, I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly how I got there, but you can get there. So we created these show Luts, and then we shot some makeup tests, and then Ryan McGregor tweaked it a little bit on the set, and then we sent it back, and we tweaked it again, and then we made like a low light Lut and a regular show Lut. And those became the Luts. And I could tell you then that's how we shoot it, because it's pretty extreme. And Pete could talk about this, because when he came in and I told him about it, it's pretty extreme, and it had to be, you had to have it, you really had to have to see it, because you have to kind of light to it. And then on the final color, there's a whole nother rebuild of that Lut, just because when we make singular images perfect, but when a colorist is matching images and all these things, that show Lut is destructive, and he needs to be in a less destructive situation. So he rebuilds it in another way, and so our final is it's the same thing but comes at a different direction. I do color. I supervise the color on pretty much on every episode of any Fargo that's ever been.
Whoa, wait, you do?
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
that's amazing.
That's a big deal.
No, I'm literally working on 3 projects at a time, all the time. I'm literally color correcting one project, coming up with another project, color correcting another project. It's just, it just doesn't end. And Fargo, we spend a lot of time, and we do whatever it takes. But, so Pete came in, and I'm like, okay, Pete, not only are these filters that we just talked about, but
here's my process.
Here's a whole nother layer.
All of this.
This is a lot. This is heavy.
And I'm directing, so you better.
This is heavy.
Do you feel like you have to do that though? To save yourself, if there's an issue with the Lut or anything like that, you can kind of get yourself out.
What's that?
You're doing the color correcting.
No, man, I'm not gonna save myself.
You hand it off to someone else, and they don't understand what.
No. I mean, Pete will do all his episodes, but I kind of supervise the entire show. I always have.
Okay.
I let people do their thing. I collaborate. But I do the whole thing. So I supervise it. So, so Pete comes in, and I'm like, literally. I hope he reflects on this a little bit. It's like we're using this crazy filter that Keslow camera had to scour the earth to find multiples of. I'm serious. Colette could tell you. It's just it was down to the wire. And then this diffusion that was probably no one should use. And then I'm like, that's not it. Now we're gonna drop in this Lut that's gonna force you to really get you out of your comfort zone. So he can talk about that.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I liken the Lut to actually shooting reversal film, and it immediately kind of knocked me back years to being like, oh wow, I feel like I have a reversal film stock with really very little latitude, where it's, to really get that look. Part of the curve of this is just, like Dana said, just taking the bottom of that curve and just flattening out the blacks. So my first impression was I'm going to have to use more light than I've used in years. But the greatest thing is that, it kicked me out of the comfort zone that I've been working in, and it made me think differently. And in doing so, I'm really grateful to Dana, because it's just, I feel like that's where you advance your craft, right?
Yeah.
And
when you're out of your comfort zone, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. That's obviously where great things happen. you know, I walked around the sets with Dana as we were prepping, and he's like, look, I've used this or this slide or whatever. He's like, but you don't have to do it the way I do it. Like, just like, you know, I want you to do your thing. So I kind of thought about it for a while, and I noticed there was a lot of, you know, there was a lot of hard light being used, and which is really, really cool. And I just started embracing those things. And I feel like I wanted to kind of add a layer of soft light into that world that could be controllable. But in doing that, you would have to, you know, really bring your levels up to, you know, to a certain degree. And I'm a big fan of using muslin and you know, creating soft sources and really, you know, really controlling it. But then what I really started doing was gravitating towards older tungsten sources and using LEDs as a sort of like what I'd sort of call like cream. Like when I worked on House of Cards, we would have, you know, muslin in the ceilings and you know, like a lot of lights above that for this kind of existing, I call it just like, just sort of like this living invisible light. Yep. And then I would start like, and to build on that, you know, we would hang like ultra bounce skirts around and like bounce lights into it. And it's always, you know, you watch that show, it's like, you know, where's the light source?
Where's light?
I mean, I think that's sort of the magic of that. Yeah. And on that show, like Dana said, and I didn't have a DIT on that show either. I mean, and so what I did, I went into the red camera and actually started like tweaking the, you know, the black levels and a couple of things. So I kind of felt like I had something, you know, to work with.
Sure.
So I, you know, for me in approaching this show, I was like, all right, well, if I can bring some of the soft light that I'm a fan of, but then mix it with hard light, but in using hard light, I really wanted to go to older tungsten sources, like go to mole lights and, you know, you know, using Parcan, like older Parcans and stuff. And even like, you know, for sunlight coming through things. And I just started finding this kind of magic in that. And I would say the last part of it all is I noticed the way the LUT was created and the filter, you know, that we're using is, you know, in the cocktail is manipulating the color, that I was like, like where can I sneak in not just contrast of light, but contrast of color? So then, you know, Dana was talking about certain colors and things at the time, and I was looking at the Saw Lighter book, and so you know, I think you'll really notice in the show, like, you know, sometimes I would have these like tungsten sources, and then in the LEDs, I would, you know, mix a little bit of color of just sort of like living light in there. And anyway, it just kind of got me thinking in different ways. And I think it's all created this beautiful cocktail for the show.
That's really cool. We're gonna start taking some questions now. And we already have some in the Q&A. So a reminder, if you have questions, click on the Q&A, put it in there so we can track it, and don't do it anonymously because then we can't call on you. But we do have a question. Stephen, do we want to bring them in?
Yeah, we have one from Daisy Gomez. I'll go ahead and add her.
All right, Daisy, you get to ask your question live. So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Cool. Hey everyone. I just wanted to know, like, once you mounted the lenses on each camera, did you have like different options? How do they behave differently? What made you choose the camera that you did with all this color and LUTs and the lenses too?
That's a good question. I mean, because, okay, for me, it's a couple part question, but I was attracted to large format. And it's weird because I have this discussion with people and they don't see it the same way I see it. But for me, like a 50 mil is like a 35 on the LF. But I have the field of view of a 35, the distortion qualities of, you know, of a 50, and the depth of field of a 50. So it's like, you know, which normally a 50 is a lens I don't really normally use because it's flat. So, but I do like the fact that I'm able to have this flatter field of view. You know, I have the 35 field of view. So it's the same with the 25, you know, I'm able to use a wider lens. I mean, the 20, I'm able to use these, or 21 now, I'm sorry, use these wider lenses, yet have less kind of distortion and more fall off. So that was my huge attraction to large format. You know, I've tested various large formats. I just kind of been an ARRI guy for a long time, and I kind of was eagerly waiting for the LF to kind of come online. And when it first came out, there was a couple of restrictions with battery powering, and there was only the big one, the full LF, and I moved the camera quite a bit. So we use a lot of Ronin, and I don't really do handheld a lot. I mean, on most of the TV stuff I don't do it, but so we use cranes and jibs, and so a lot of Ronin work, and so I needed a camera that could go on there. Well, we got the Ronin, the regular LF to go on the Ronin. Now, thank God we have the Mini. It makes it easier. So, for me, it was like, so when ZEISS came out with like their large format lenses. So when you start, 2 years ago, when you started testing LF or large format lenses, there wasn't a lot to choose from. I mean, there is still pretty much any still camera lens will work on a large format camera. But there's always mechanical thing. To me, I start with, bring all these lenses out, look at them. Before I even look at it, put a lens on the camera, it has to pass this mechanical test. Like, can it mechanically do the show? Can it survive the weather and being winter for Fargo? Are the focus pullers just going to like hate me and hate me for, using this original Baltar that's going to fall apart, stuff like that. So it has to pass that test. And then I put it up and see what it looks like, with that sensor and that's where it comes from. So, all that plays a role. I mean, the camera, probably for me now, I don't see myself really just kind of testing a Venice, just to test a Venice. I mean, if I have a project that needs more, sensitivity, I may look into a camera that has more sensitivity than I need, but I don't think I'm going to run into that personally, because they've been making great movies for many, many years with less sensitivity. I mean, movies I'm fans of, Godfather, The Apocalypse Now, these things, they didn't need 2500 ASA to make these films. So, I think that's one reference standard that I could say that for me now, the Arri LF is probably the reference of that. And then the lenses, like we talked about, just finding the right combination for the project.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Daisy. Great question. Who we got next, Steven?
We got Chris Hamilton here.
Chris, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hey, Pete. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, Chris. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well. Dana, nice to meet you.
Chris is a very talented filmmaker that I know. So.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Very gifted. Yeah.
I learned so much from you. I have to say that. So thank you so much for everything. My question, real quick, you mentioned the Saw Lighter book, both of you. What other non-cinema references do you each use for inspiration for your looks?
I'll let Pete go first.
That's a really, really great question. I mean, I think for this, I often sort of limit, what it may be for a specific project. So for this, oddly enough, I didn't really look much past that book. I'd say for every individual project, I might try to just find one or two maybe simple things and then try to do most of the work and testing. I find that I actually use a lot less reference the deeper I've gone into my career in terms of books and references or even other movies, because I really want to create something unique, and whereas I found early in my career, I felt like I was constantly referencing other films and other things and constantly looking for photos. And I find I actually do a lot more testing and trying to develop a look just kind of in my own headspace. So I actually, I love the fact that Dana, like for this project, had this book, but I could think of other like projects where maybe, there's anything from Gregory Crutzen to, obviously a lot of us have used like Todd Hito, and I feel like Atmosphere, and it's become such a big thing, for so many of us, I remember when, getting I think the book, The Americans, is that the book, the Robert Frank book, and hearing that was an influence for Seven. But oddly enough, I feel like as I've gone further into my career, I've used less and less reference, and I've tried to make it more about, you know, like finding it in my own headspace and really doing it through testing.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
For me, believe it or not, it starts with music. And luckily when I direct, I get to play music on the set, and I constantly play music in scenes, like actually while we're shooting them, to get the actors in a certain mind space, because I don't have the words to get them in the mind space that I want them to be in lyrically. And I feel like that's the same with even the photography. Like I read the script and story and the progression, and this thing goes off in my head. Like I think, like Pete said, there's this mind space thing that happens, and you know, and then, you know, you're doing this map where you're putting all this imagery. I mean, we all, you know, I'm a big photo book collector. So I look at images all the time. I'm looking at, I'm a big YouTube guy. I look at YouTube all the time and watch all kinds of things. Vimeo, I watch a lot of I follow a lot of young cinematographers on Instagram and you know, up and coming, because that, you know, and all that stuff kind of informs me. And so, and it crashes into each other, you know, and that might even bring me to the book, Sal Leiter book, you know, like maybe that gets me to that space, you know, but there's a certain music going off in my head all the time. That's just, and I'm so fortunate that when I direct a lot now, that I'm able to kind of like share that. I feel like I'm doing that. I feel like I'm sharing my mind space with the other collaborators. You know, and it could be the grip, it could be the electrician, it could be, you know, the actor, and to me, like I see it, I look around the room, and we're all one at that time, and we're on the right mind space, and how can you fail? You know, how can you fail? So that's kind of where I start.
Very
Thank you
cool.
very much. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Chris, for the great question. Very nice. Who do we have next, Steven?
Nick Rafferty has a really good one here.
Come on in, Nick.
Hey, it's been a pleasure working with you both on Fargo.
Hey, Nick.
What do you do, Nick? What's your position?
I'm the location manager.
Oh, cool.
Nick,
How do you find these locations and without having to paint out everything in the background? How do you do it?
With an amazing production designer and, you know, the vision and the script that these guys feed to us. So,
Nick,
but I think this secret cocktail sounds fascinating. I absolutely would love to drink some one day. It sounds like a great quarantine drink, but I'm wondering how this works, this cocktail, between, you know, day scenes and night scenes, or even taking it further, how the cocktail might function differently on stage versus location.
Yeah, we have two show LUTs that we use, and they're really more about where we are with the lighting, and like a night exterior day versus a day exterior, a moody night interior, you know, versus a brighter day interior, and that's about it for you know, what we change. I don't even know the percentage. I really don't. You know, Ryan McGregor, I think, just puts in whatever he thinks is one of the two LUTs. I don't even remember saying, dude, low light LUT. I don't remember saying that.
I would interject one thing, which is interesting, which is because of the LUT and how heavy it is, and how deep the blacks are. One thing we do is we do use a lot of atmosphere on the show. So there's a fair amount of atmosphere on the stage, and the atmosphere, in a way, you know, acts as your fill, right? You know, because it's lifting the exposure in the air. And so I did a scene where Nick got an amazing location for us, an exterior location. We just did 2 nights, and one thing I found that, and which is a real challenge in working in those, is so you get outside and you're like, okay, well I have this LUT and it's really deep in the blacks and I'm shooting at night, and and the sky there's no clouds in the sky, and there's no, we don't have that, so one thing I've tried to do, I've always been a fan of atmosphere, and so we were trying to get a base layer of atmosphere working outside, and Dana had introduced something also that works, has worked well. Like he said, like so many people love like sodium vapors, but really in this time they use mercury vapors. So, you'll definitely notice in the show, and that'll be a big character in the story. There's, they give off a certain green light. And when you have this, sort of nice, mix of color outside and atmosphere, and if you have mercury vapors in the distance, and the mercury vapor isn't just this little spot of light that back there, all of a sudden now it's this, you may have a car and you're like, wow, I'm working at night, man, and in a really dark environment, but there's a mercury vapor there. And if I can get the atmosphere behind that car, then all of a sudden that car is silhouetted in that light. And so, we're trying to find ways to make this look, as cinematic outside, and not have, have a night exterior where everything's really crushed out. And that's been a really fun challenge for me. And it is a different theory of lighting and managing that atmosphere inside and outside.
Oh, you know what? That's something we haven't mentioned that I don't even know if anybody knows, and I'll drop the bomb right now, live. We did a black and white episode, and that's a whole nother cocktail.
Yes.
that's
Gorgeous.
Wait, with the same sensor or with a modified?
Same sensor, same lenses, but a whole nother crazy filter combination that, again, if I told you probably wouldn't use it. And then we created some pretty aggressive show LUTs. I forced the colorist to work in Resolve. You could actually do work in monochrome. There's a monochrome setting, and then you could use the colors of the sensor to create different textures, just like black and white, like a filter. And I created like a tri-X look, and it's quite special. But it was a whole nother thing that I weeks in advance, months in advance, I start warning people, okay, dude, I'm gonna go pretty hardcore on this black and white. And so we had to, with Ryan, we had to start getting everybody on board and we did some testing, and I wanted to follow through from the dailies all the way to the final, and we had we're always, sometimes these processes mean that they have to go out of even the dailies colorists have to go out of their comfort zone of what they use, because there's software they use that makes their lives easier, and I'm not interested in making anybody's life easier. So I, like you need to use this processes and go all the way through, and that's another whole thing that is going to blow your mind, man. And then I don't even want to say any more about that, because there's a whole nother layer to that black and white episode that we could talk about later, when you see it.
Yeah, we have to have another one of these talks after everyone's seen the season. So that.
No, I think you're going to be, I think there's going to be a lot more questions. You're going to be like, holy shit, Pete, what the hell is that? And this, I mean, seriously, like right now, it's just, they're kind of words. Because the trailer is not even the final color. The trailer is from dailies, and some of the trailers that you even showed look like they're super wrong and flat. They're like publicity things. The final color is a whole nother ball game.
Yeah, that's the interesting part, because one of the trailers, like the 2-minute trailer, came out a while ago, so that's not going to look necessarily exactly like the show when it actually comes out.
Yeah, none of those are really represent the show 100%.
Okay, cool. Hey, that keeps some surprises in the books then, not a problem. So before we end off, because we got to end off in a few minutes, why don't we just talk about, real quick, both of you give us your favorite moment from the season. Like, what was the thing? Then you talked about the black and white thing, which you seem really geeked about, which is awesome. But was there another moment that you're like, oh, wow, this is cool that I was able to do this? And then Pete, same thing for you, same question.
The very first frame.
Okay.
The very first shot. It was, I had a busy last year. I was, directing a movie, shot a pretty big feature, finished Legion, started this. So and coming up with the look, and so the very first shot was like, and knowing that it worked, like I mean, it wasn't like, and you could Ryan McGregor and Chris Winterberg could tell you this, like there wasn't any hesitation. It's like day one, shot one is the same as day 125, shot 3,000.
That's awesome.
Nothing had changed. So
That's amazing.
the first image for me was the most important and most thought about.
Very cool. Pete, for you?
I'm trying to think of something where I won't give away anything. So one of the early scenes in is episode 5 that Dana directed. I don't think this will give anything away. There's a scene in a jazz club, and I just remember doing a lot of research for that scene and like Dana wanted to do a fairly intricate camera move that would essentially go in one direction, come around somebody, and then come all the way back the other way. The first thing for me was to get the tone of it right, so we decided to use only old lights from that period and use gels, right? We're so used to like just changing colors on sky panels and the stereos. Yeah. So we just kind of threw all that out. We're like, we're just gonna do this with all old lights. We're gonna do it with gels. We're gonna pick things, and then it's a brilliantly designed shot by Dana, and it laid out a lot of challenges of how to pull it out, and then it kind of breaks away into another area in the club, and it's a long continuous thing. So one of my favorite moments is to try to create something that first off felt like period correct, but that also could serve the needs of Dana's shots. Like I think Dana and I both, a reoccurring theme for Dana and I are both like, you don't like shots, you like the space. You like broad. You try to put everything in there, so you're not like turning around and like relighting or like, oh, we're going over here, let's start pulling lights in. It's like, right. I think when it's attracted me to Dana's work. It's like, man, the first time I started watching Fargo, I was like, this guy lights broad, and it lets him do amazing things with the camera, right? I mean, the character, I always felt that the camera moved in very unique ways. So it was just a very unique challenge to make the shot work, and it was required, as the camera came around behind something, we would have to dim lights off and time it right so that we wouldn't get camera shadows and that everything could work continuously. But so that was probably my favorite moment of the season.
Yeah, no, that's epic. There was like a band playing, and there was like a lot of there's a lot of things in that shot. That's an amazing shot, and even designing it wasn't even, I don't know, I wasn't thinking about, there's a certain physicality, I guess, to cameras and all these things, but somehow I feel like if I could think about it, we can do it. And we were able to do it. We had to put like a Technocrane in this. What's that club? Nick, what's that club? Oh, he's can't. Yeah, it
was kind of a small space, and I mean, the great thing about a shot like that, and anybody will tell you too, when you make a show like this, I mean, I came in and I inherited an army that Dana built, and like Dana was like this great like general that was running this army, and like every department head is a captain, right? So nobody feels like, it's like, oh, somebody dictating. Everybody's working together as this unit. And I think to create great things, you need to go in with an army, right? And immediately, I mean, everybody from our gaffer to I remember I was scouting with one of our grips, Steve Mulcahy, and Steve saying, I know the shot that Dana wants to do, and I'm going to get a Technocrane in here, man. I'm going to get a Technocrane, and I'm going to get track, and it looks impossible. And if I have to take this thing apart and reassemble it in here, we're going to do it because that's what we do on the show. And you know what I mean? Everybody just rallied behind it. And when we pulled the shot off, we were just like, so.
Yeah. No, because
you're on too. If you
everybody better, but everybody feels like everybody has ownership in that, right? Every grip, everybody in the lighting department, the board operator, our AC Chris Wittenborn, did an amazing job, and he'll come over also like aesthetically, and he understands the show, and he'll say like, hey, where should the focus be at this time? I'm kind of feeling this is right, and like these are conversations we'll have, and in that, again, I just feel like everybody feels like they're part of that shot. It's not something where someone's like, we're going to do this, and then and that's something I think also very special about the show. And as any filmmaker, you you build an army where you know, nobody's working for anybody, everybody's working together.
I'm just gonna say this real quick before I know we're almost done. You know, my Chicago-based camera crew is fucking awesome, and they were all up to the challenge, every one of them, and excited, and I have I like to push people and challenge them in a certain way. You know, I mean, like, because I have this kind of motto about, let me fail. Like, I want to fail, and let me fail, and let's see what happens. Let's do something, and if it doesn't work, we try something else. But let's all try to fail, because we know, unfortunately, we all know how to do things right. Yeah. We all know how to do things to perfection, and I like, for me, I'm like, I'm not interested in that much anymore.
Let's give props to the whole team from Fargo, because you guys are back in COVID times during the pandemic, doing your best to finish up the season and doing it right. So shout out to everybody on the team, from your top above the line to every single person below the line, working really hard out there in Chicago.
Yeah,
really proud of you.
The art department is like, they came out here the first and kind of opened the sets, and they've probably the scariest moment, and they've
pioneering.
Yeah. They started.
Stay safe. Stay safe. Do your thing. Get home safely. We're really looking forward to the season. Cannot wait. I can't thank you both enough, Dana and Pete, for being here. It's always a lot of fun to talk to you guys. We had a great chat when we reconnected just in preparation for this event. We want to thank Filmscape Chicago, Colette, and the team at Keslow Camera, and everyone else involved this weekend during all the activities. Please check out filmscapechicago.com. I know if you're registered, you have access to our booth, which is filmscapechicago.com/ZEISS. Go check that out. There's videos and stuff and more content for you to enjoy. I know Colette has an announcement for you right now, so I'll let her do that, and we'll get off. ZEISS is a proud sponsor of Filmscape Chicago, so thank you from myself and from Stephen Balsley, my colleague that joined me as well to help out today. We'll have a great rest of the day. We'll tune in as well to some of the other stuff, so we'll probably see you around. And off to you now, Colette. Thank you.
Thanks, Snehal. Thanks, everybody. I just threw it in the chat. Just remember to check out all the booths of all the vendors. Like Snehal said, just filmscapechicago.com, and you can see all the vendors at the bottom and just click on their logo.
I thought you were going to do like a large format, a mini giveaway or something.
If I had those resources, yeah. So yeah, that's all. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.